Here we go. Listen, we started it on time, Doc.
Yes.
All right. For those that are tuning in to another great episode of the Know Your Rights mini conference interview tour, this is Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, host of DTD Urban Multisport Radio podcast show. And I am the president of the Randallstown NAACP. And I have a wonderful colleague, guest, homegirl, sister up in the house. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Dr. L.
You are so crazy. Dr. LaShaune Stitt here, joining Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, Dr. D, as I love to call her. Just here, happy to share my knowledge and my experience and my insight and all my thoughts on what we have coming up with the Know Your Rights tour. I don't know. Did you want? I don't know if I need to get into everything that I do, but
no. Well, actually, let the people. This is your time to shine. Go ahead.
Well, I am, first off, I always say this. I am a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a child of God. I've been saying I'm God's favorite lately because I've been very favored in more ways than one. Even with the burdens come they're the blessings. And I am the state chair of the Maryland Commission for Women. I'm also a board member of an organization that is dedicated to food sovereignty and supporting Black farmers in Maryland and Virginia and some other southern states. And what else? I'm an advocate for education, 25 plus year educator. There's really, stepping into some other spaces where I feel more comfortable. A lot of work that I've done in the past for young women and women. I want to say girls, but I don't want to just limit myself, but it's young women and women of all ages. And I'm stepping more into that. So I've been spending some time lately and just kind of thinking about where my next level of ascension will be. So that's where I am. And that's who I am. And I guess that's it, right? That should be enough.
That is enough. And hopefully for those that are tuning in and listening or listening to the recap will understand, the greatest message I'm taking from your intro is just quality time, right? Just stepping back and trying to be in the moment, not living from yesterday and tomorrow, but simply for today. And that is hard in today's climate, especially what's happening in our communities and within our cultures and, for genders and just for families and leaders. So I absolutely love that introduction. And thank you for sharing it with everyone, because most people don't have that serenity, that namaste that people would say, they speak it, but they're not acting on it. And the fact that you're acting on it, I think says a lot. And hopefully people are obviously something going on out there.
We just have one here too.
People are paying attention to that. So I think that is phenomenal. And I'm glad to, have you as a, my sister doc and my homegirl in the background and on the positive front of making differences in our community. And so what brings us here during this interview tour? As most know, Project 2025 has been something that's been on the horizon. It was voted upon last election cycle in 2024. That was passed, and unfortunately, based off the 4 areas, as soon as the current leader of our country got into office, he started enacting on it. And so the NAACP, under its umbrella and all of the subcategories that it fights on, has what's called the fight against Project 2025 is called Our 2025. And so in our executive leadership programming or sessions that I held earlier this year for the Randallstown NAACP branch 7032B, we decided to do the Know Your Rights mini conference. So let me be very clear. We trademarked Know Your Rights. And
let it be known.
Right. Some people are still trying to piggyback off of it, but no one can do it our way. Our answer to the Our Project 2025 from the National NAACP is our Know Your Rights mini tour. And that is important because there's a lot happening in our culture. A lot has happened A lot
Yeah.
has yet to be happened. But before we dive into this, I want to give a little background on the fight against Project 2025. As we know, Project 2025 is a manifesto that seeks to undermine our progress, dismantle democracy, and take us back to a time when we did not have a voice or a vote. And we're literally living that right now. The comprehensive policy agenda proposes a coalition of over 100 conservative organizations, drastically hoping to reshape the federal government, particularly impacting Black and marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that's everybody that whose skin isn't fair and light skin. But even
Mm-hmm.
those cultures are being impacted, unfortunately. The proposed policy under Project 2025 includes significant rollback in regulatory protections, reductions in social welfare programs, the dismantling of federal civil service workforce, and any focus on equity, even the Department of Education. But the NAACP decided to denounce Project 2025 and put forward their initiative called Our 2025, a collection of policies aims to benefit Black Americans in the entire nation. Our 2025 is marked by higher wages, investment in our schools, pathways to progress within our criminal justice system, and so much more. And the NAACP areas that they're fighting the Project 2025 and their Project 2025 is on civil rights, health, economic justice, criminal justice, environment, education, and the list goes on and on. And so for our unit 7035, we're taking that mantle and doing something locally. And that's our
Mm-hmm.
Know Your Rights tour. And the Know Your Rights tour is not a political, it has nothing to do with politics. It is led by the people for the people to give tangible solutions to what
Mm-hmm.
we're really dealing with in these areas, whether it's social, economic justice, health, education, civil rights, the list goes on and on. And so in this mini conference that's coming up on August 23rd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the
Yes.
Randallstown Extension Center, we have facilitators and workshop presenters like Dr. LaShaune Stitt, that we have, coming to bring real, so talk about issues, but really, really real solutions. And so
Mm-hmm.
before we jump in, Dr. LaShaune, why do you think that this conference is important?
I mean, you basically hit the nail on the head. I mean, I'll just overall, like you said, this country is in shambles. I'm going to use some clean words. we are in shambles. Folks are losing all types of services and benefits that many are entitled to. I mean, there was the talk about people getting social security. It's an entitlement. That's not an entitlement. I'll speak for myself. I've been working since I was 14. I've had a statement, a social security statement, in all my credits for years, and I still haven't been able to capitalize off of it. That doesn't mean that I'm not entitled to it. I paid into it, so why wouldn't I be entitled to my money? You want to call it an entitlement? Yeah, I'm entitled to my money, right? Even something as simple as medical coverage. We have very vulnerable populations that need medicine, health coverage, mental health services, whatever the case may be, and they're being stripped away. And so when you think about this, the state of the country, and how people are really at a point where it's like the have nots and have less.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're at such a deficiency, and I hate to even think on that level, but many people are. But they do need to know, I say, options, or what's available to them, or how we can sustain ourselves, whether it is supporting Black farmers, or who are not a victim to Monsanto, and they're doing their thing and they're supporting their communities, or whether it's a a small youth organization that's trying to make sure that the young people are not only mentally prepared or academically prepared, but physically and spiritually prepared for the warfare that we have going on. Because it is in a sense a type of war going on. It's a war against principalities that's happening. So it's so many things, and I think all of that is so important for young people as well as the elders. I mean, we need to know how to take care of ourselves, support each other, share information, because we all know that in society there are a lot of information and opportunity hoarders that choose not to. Oh, it's mine. I'm going to keep this information for myself. That's not how we're going to make it through. That's not how things are going to happen. Just various reasons, but I'll stop there. But there are so many. I think this tour is going to be extremely valuable to so many people and so many communities, and the impact it will have down the line is going to be priceless. That's just how I see it. Am I freezing? I feel like I'm going.
Yeah, you are
Something's
just a little
happening.
bit, but your voice is resonating as it should. And you brought up
Okay.
quite a few categories that are impacted by culturally in communally what's happened. As a mom, you have this background in education and higher education and leadership. But I want to pause for a second. Our youth today are facing things that our ancestors faced, that we kind of didn't have to
Right.
endure.
Right.
They have the positive and living in a technology world, but things have been rolled back that leaves the certainty of their future unknown. As a
Right.
mom with teen and grown youth and things like that, what type of conversations are you having as it relates to the current state of things and where they are in their future goals, so that they're not falling into depression or losing hope and faith?
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'll start by saying that the conversations don't stop. Right, the conversations are constant. Whether we're talking about what's happening in Sudan, whether we're talking about what's happening in Baltimore City. I mean, the conversations about survival, the conversations about your livelihood and protections, and not just physical protections, but I'm talking about mental protections. You know, having these associations with other young people who understand that this is not right. This is not how things are supposed to be. We're not supposed to be living like this. And like you said, even though our young people, they have such an advantage when it comes to technology that we we had. I mean, we were still very young, when any type of, I'm gonna date myself, but beepers and all that kind of stuff, and the big computers that took up a whole room. We've advanced so much over the past 20, 30, 40 years, but we doing a backpedal, and it's scary. It's scary because we have sons, right? And we know our sons, especially our sons of color, they are extremely vulnerable. And I'm not taking anything away from our daughters, because our daughters are subjected to so much in this patriarchy that exists. Just making sure that they're okay, making sure that they understand that there are options available to them, making sure that they make right decisions, making sure that they have multiple ways to um cushion the blow. And I'll say it like that, whether it's owning a business, whether it's investing in stock, whether it's getting with their friends who are of the same mind, and establishing some type of organization. I mean, we in my household, we have conversations about everything. I know my kids get sick of me sometimes, but my greatest quote is: failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So if we don't prepare, and we talked about this earlier, we were talking about the bartering system and how, many people are building compounds and they're taking care of family, and, not only just because we need space, but we need to make sure that we're all safe. But how do you barter with another family? If I have 5 chickens and you have 3 cows, how do we learn how to do this thing? And, it's just many conversations around just being able to take care of themselves, because tomorrow's not promised, and I say this with my whole heart, you know, if anything happens to me, are you guys going to be okay? Are you going to be okay? And I think that's why we continue the conversations. And we know teenagers don't want to hear it. Sometimes they're like, "Meh, meh, meh," because we sound like Charlie Brown's teacher, but it's necessary. It is necessary that we hear where they're coming from too. We need to know how they're feeling. I'm gonna go back a little bit, because pre-COVID, we were all in a good space. I mean, collectively, as a society, we were in a fairly good space. That thing wiped us out emotionally, spiritually. Just it took many of us into a space that we should not have been in, and we're all just slowly trying to get out of it. And the younger people, I think they were affected by it more so than anyone else. And I'm not negating anyone else's experience. I'm not doing that. But I'm saying it's our teenagers, they went through a lot. They didn't have the space that they needed to really thrive and to interact and so forth. So now they're just trying to get back into the groove. And when you talked about depression, we have so many young people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, all the things, and it's not okay. It's not okay. And they need to know that, we as parents need to know that if we can't afford for those services, there's something in place to protect our children. But with all these cuts and all this stuff happening with these weirdos, I'm gonna say it, with these weirdos in Washington, nothing is guaranteed, So how do we provide the spaces and make space so that our young people are protected, that their hearts are protected, that their minds are protected, that their bodies, as young women, that our bodies are protected. It's just a lot. And I'll just encourage anyone, if you have young people, whether they're in your household or not, continue the conversation. Keep on, current events. And I know we used to do this when we were younger, current events in school. And believe it or not, when I was in the classroom, my colleagues would be like, "Why are you doing current events?" "Because they need to know what's going on." "What are you talking about?" They need to know what's going on around the world, so that they understand this is what's happening here, but it's also happening there. We're teaching them to care about each other. We're teaching them, not just who's in your household, but to care about other people. And so continue the conversations, continue bringing up what's happening, in Ukraine or in Gaza, on the Gaza Strip, have these conversations, and not in a way where it's oh, I want to scare you, but it's like, this is reality, and you guys need to know, but you also need to protect yourselves, right? So I know I said a lot. You know how you get, Doc.
No, but it actually bring up all of the things that the NAACP is fighting for with the OWL Project 2025, in our first initial episode with Professor Ingrid Fabio McLaughlin, we talked about those 4 areas that fall within Project 2025. And the last one is the 180-day playbook, right? And that 180-day playbook, our current administration stuck to it out the gate. Yep. And it is violating civil rights. It is impacting health. It does have a direct dissension on economic justice. It does impact environmental. It's dealing with a lot of these areas, across the span that typically people wouldn't put in one basket. And so when you're talking about, having the conversations with our youth today, it automatically brings back the gap and the transitional services from elementary to middle to high into the higher education, whether it's vocational, JUCO, or 4-year, and then into the real world. And so with the dismantling of the Department of Education, which it's crazy, but then there's some validation. And let me clarify that.
No, I got you. I hear you.
Right. As educators, we get it, right? Because we can speak of it from the internal outside, right? Where most people, when they're looking at education, they're looking at it from Hawaii, right? We're in Maryland. But when you're internally, you're seeing the struggles that are happening on these levels that are disconnected. And the Department of Education is supposed to be there, by way of, Board of Educations within within districts and things like that. Is it perfect? No. Right. But to dismantle an entire Department of Education and put in there the mandate that they have is going to make the educational curve wider. For students. It's not helping it, it's going to hurt it, right? And when we're thinking about that, the issues that are in education with the 180-day playbook, with the impact on education, like the dismantling, laying off federal workers, our youth today, where do they turn to? How do we close the gap so they're standing on their own 2 feet economically, right? With the self-confidence. And even if, they do need assistance, where are they going to get it from? If Project 2025 continues moving in the direction it's moving in, it's going to make the richer, the poor, poorer, and wipe out everyone, because people are in need. They were in need before Project 2025 was in play, but now it is in play. It's not about being woke anymore. It's about literally, as you mentioned, having a conversation, not just having a conversation with the problems, but bringing solutions to the forefront that's tangible, meaningful, accountable, and helping people to be a little more responsible for where they are and where they want to go. And so do I know your rights in mini conference is it a means to an end? Absolutely not. But as you just mentioned, in that short amount of time, when we talked about conversations, our youth and young adults today will forever be living the impact of Project 2025 for decades to come. So how do we begin to have that conversation with them, saying, listen, you're already behind educationally, you're living in poverty, but you don't even know what poverty looks like. Programs are being cut back that you didn't even know you needed, but when you do need it, it won't be there. Your parents are trying to scramble how not just to keep the lights on, but just trying to figure out how they're going to wash each day. And we need you to go out into the world because you're 18 to be productive. The math ain't mathing. So what do we do, or what can be done? And this is leading into your topic. We are diehard educators, where you can create a playbook with your eyes closed, loop earrings or not, but you're diving in a category that is not your familiarity, which is economic development and sustainability. So on that topic, Doc, what are some things that you're going to talk about without having to dive deep face into what's happening? Because people need to go to Eventbrite right now and get your tickets, $10 for our Know Your Rights mini conference, by way of 7032B, right? That's the Randallstown branch. Let's not get it twisted. Go get your tickets. But in this area of economic development and sustainability, why did you pick this topic? Why was this topic of the 9 areas that fall under the NAACP umbrella that spoke to you?
Well, let's tell the truth. No. Was it chosen for me?
We are recording, right? We are live on it. No, just joking. You can take.
What? Why? No, and I'm joking. And I'll say this. I do like to dance on the side of discomfort at times. And no, this is not my area of expertise, but I recall when I was teaching one of my units in my course was on the racial wealth gap. And it was something new to a lot of my students. They didn't really understand it. And with the broad racial wealth gap, I broke down housing, education, and I kind of branched into, school to prison pipeline. And we went from a historical perspective of, just in Maryland, just in Baltimore County itself, and how segregation existed in housing, and how, all the things. And it was very interesting to me, because I always, whenever I pick topics, like I always, it's for selfish reasons, because I want to study a little bit more too. And not being a native of Baltimore County, it was very interesting for me to understand the dynamics that took place in education, and how, I'll just use as an example, in Towson, folks know George Washington Carver High School for Arts and Technology, right? But not really knowing the history behind it, not knowing that it was a one building for, grades, I think it was 6 through 12, where free Black students, they started at Schoolhouse 9, I believe it was, or Schoolhouse 4, in Timonium. Many of them walked that whole stretch from Seminary Avenue to George Washington Carver to get their education. And because that's the only place where they were allowed to learn, right? And then in proximity to 3, 4 streets over, you had the covenants that were put in place for the houses that were there, where Black folks were not allowed to, to live, to own property. So those type of things are what fueled my interest. And, we just use an example of Rogers Forge, just for an example, with my students. And some of them lived in that area, and they were like, wow, I never even knew this existed. And it's like, yeah, these are the things that we need to know, things that were put in place to prevent upward mobility, to prevent, Blacks from even having home ownership, and all these things. It was like a mind-blowing experience for so many of them. And so when the option came up, I was like, now this is not what I have my degrees in. But I think I could do a little something. And, being an entrepreneur for so long, the struggles, and I'm speaking from my own perspective, knowing that I didn't know everything. I still don't know everything. And it's a roller coaster ride from time to time, but to be able to still sustain, over 14 years of being, quote unquote, independent, being my own boss, and being able to, still afford my children the opportunity to do certain things and participate in things, I had cushions in place. Right. And, I'll even stretch it a little bit further. There's a book, it's called Multiple Streams of Income. And I was sharing that with my kids when they were little. Listen, you need a stash, you need this, you need savings, you need that, these are things that I did. And I usually, everything is internal, and then I make it external. So when I was going through this unit with my students, they were learning things that they had not known, or some of them may have had an idea, but they didn't know the full impact. Like, if your education system is, and we know the education system is not designed for Black and brown students. Let's just put it out there. Let's be clear. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. Then what's supposed to happen to them? We're grooming, particularly our young men and even our young women, we're grooming them for prison. And so then you have another level that we're dealing with. So all of it combined, it's so interesting to me. I was never a historian. I hated history when I was in college. Even high school, I was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But the more I didn't want to know, the more I discovered, and really understanding the foundation of what the education system was founded upon was even more so like, yeah, I need to get into this. So for selfish reasons, I these are topics, these are issues that are very personal to me, and I think they're very concerning. And our young people, who they're going to be out there, the next generation, they're the ones in charge of our 401ks, our pensions, our social security, all those things. They are going to be the ones who are going to be in charge of our money, our well-being. They need to know the way that Project 2025 is not the way. But like you said, it's going to take decades to unravel this nonsense that is going on, not only from the executive level, from the judicial level, local, national, local. It is going to be a mess. So, I mean, I hope I answered your question, but it was for various reasons, and plus, I didn't want to tackle education because I forgot who had Professor Ingrid has education, and I just
No,
wanted
she
to do.
is environmental. Actually,
Oh,
both of you come from education background. So I
see,
challenge, just a little historical piece to this. So this is our committee, and I chaired a committee, right? And I was like, okay, let's try to do something outside of our comfort zone, because we literally all could do education without eyes closed. But
right?
what you just hit on, your perspective from taking on economic development and sustainability is because it really does have a crossover into education. It does have a crossover into civil rights. It does have a
Yeah,
crossover into the, criminal justice system. It does have a crossover into health. It does have a crossover into environmental. It has a crossover into all of these areas. So as
yes,
much as we will beat the dead horse for education, we don't need to do that anymore, because everything is literally connected to the
mhm,
same thing. But what
mhm,
isn't talked about, like you just gave us that historical perspective from one of the most popular schools in Baltimore County, right? People aren't
mhm,
not understanding the historical perspective behind it. And when you're looking at economic development and sustainability, there are subcategories that you talked about: the entrepreneurship, the housing, the business owners, right? And
mhm.
that in themselves, those subcategories in themselves are being heavily impacted by
Yes,
Project 2025, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
even the national umbrella for the NAACP with having these subcategories, if we're not doing locally on our jobs on a local level, then all of this will trickle down, come
Yeah,
back around, and then the entire nation is in trouble. So the economic landscape or things are really what we're living in, a community is thriving in, when we're
mhm,
talking about, home ownership, when we're talking about housing, Section 8 or not, when we're talking about, one thing you talked about with the pandemic, what
mhm.
we realized in the pandemic is that people, baby, was bringing up their most important,
Yes,
not jobs, but their entrepreneurial skills. I mean,
mhm.
like we say, let's be real, Black people didn't waver at all,
Nope.
because our parents used to do our hair in the kitchen with the hot comb.
Yep.
Braiding was not a big deal now. Matter of fact, it's like reinventing time with
Mhm,
beads and
mhm.
beads back in the 1847. So for
Yes.
culturally, we were fine, right?
Mhm,
It was the
mhm.
non-minorities that struggled a little bit, just a little bit. But
Just a little.
what we realized is that the economic landscape back then, which should have taken a dip, increased,
It did.
because people
Mhm,
found their niche. People, understood the impact and the gravity of what the society needed, right?
mhm,
And so,
mhm.
the unemployment rate was low, but it wasn't as low as it is now, because
Right,
people were coming out of the woodworks with things that,
right.
people couldn't go and get their hair done, in a salon. The salon was in
Mhm,
the basement, it was in your
mhm,
neighbor's salon,
mhm.
like that. So the economic impact does roll over from education. It does
Mhm.
extend an olive branch there. But, you know, another thing that you touched on is that, which isn't spoken about enough, are the solutions for those businesses that are falling, or that, you know, federal workers that are being laid off or being brought back and then being laid off again, you know,
And then
or
being recruited for ICE.
Doc, don't go there. Let me stay focused. Right. But so when we're talking about the impact locally, and the businesses are struggling. And if they're struggling from a business standpoint, that means their income is struggling. If their income is struggling, that means their credit score is struggling. If their credit scores are struggling, that means that them trying to go out and get an SBA loan.
Right. So it's a downward spiral.
It's a downward spiral. And then things are being taken away, such as we're in jeopardy, food stamps, you know, Social Security, you know, Medicaid and Medicare. So what do we do at this point? So, you know, economic development and sustainability has this global impact, and it rolls over into these other areas. So, you know, what are some of give me 2 topics or 2 areas that people can expect from the presentation of your workshop under economic development and sustainability on the 23rd. Don't give them everything, Doc, because they need to go get their tickets. www.event. No tour, $10, and show up.
I'm definitely going to cover some advocacy. I'm going to keep it broad because you don't want me to give it away.
No, what does advocacy? What do you mean by advocacy? Because we know advocacy can go in a lot.
Can go in so many different. Yeah, I was trying to keep it broad. I didn't want you told me not to give so much away.
Zip my mouth. You just said don't give it away, and here you are asking me specifics. Okay, let me back up.
And then I'll just say on a broader level, we'll talk a little bit about the racial wealth gap. And you just honestly, you kind of discussed it. You gave a little taste because it is collectively, we're caught up in a cyclical. I'm trying real hard not to use any negative words, and I'm really trying to stay very, very positive and not come from a deficit way of thinking. But you know, folks are struggling in various ways, and like you said, everybody doesn't have Section 8. You know, it may not be a Section 8 issue for you. It may not be a food stamps issue for you. It may just straight up be like, you know, you're a nonprofit and grant funding is being cut. Like, it's so many different ways that our upward mobility is being affected. And, you know, yes, of course, if your education if you don't get the right educational experience that you should get, if it's not equitable, then what happens? And then, you know, I don't want to say too much, because if I keep going, I'm going to keep on going down the rabbit hole. I'll just leave it there.
But let's
say racial wealth gap. Let's say
you froze. I think you want to say advocacy.
Yeah,
there we go.
I was in a moment.
No, it's okay. You kind of
sorry.
Literally, you was looking up and your screen buffered, and then you came back to advocacy.
Oh.
And you know, even
maybe that was a moment of prayer.
Right. Moment for people to allow it to set in, because advocacy is not just you getting up there cussing somebody out because you took your car to a shop and the people are being disrespectful, and then you want to take your money and get out of there. But if you don't have your car fixed, then you can't go nowhere, right?
Right.
And so that's a concern. And then when we're talking about advocacy, how do you advocate not just from something menial that's local, but like you said, grants are being cut back, funding is being cut back. You know, nonprofits not quite sure which way to go in because they're just trying to keep the lights on. You know, for profits, I'm not even gonna. We know that there's an inflation that is happening,
right?
And what used to cause I'll use my fur babies. I have cats, you know, not dogs. So my fur baby had to get a procedure done. Like back in 2022, it was like 600-700. Man, I had to get that procedure done 3 months ago. It was like $1,600, and I was like,
What happened? I know. Wait,
all they could say was things. The prices have gone up, and
it's
they're
the
not
same
telling.
tool, the same tools, the same procedure. Like what? I know.
And actually, we didn't even use the high end anesthesia, but it was when I said, I was just like, but my
Can't
fur
be.
baby had to have it. But I was just like, whatever you don't need, cut it out, right?
That's right.
Like,
That's
bring it
right.
back. But you know, the inflation part of what we're living in today, and if you know, resources are being pulled back and grants are being restricted, you know, the latest that came out from my understanding, and it's by glimpse, not by research, that you know, even now the current administration is trying to streamline applications, right? That is honing in on race and their economic background, and you know, and I'm just like, I don't even know how this is even possible for a person at that level to get caught up in things that are not relevant to you. But that advocacy part, parents are stuck right now, right? They're trying to motivate their youth at home on going to the next level, because listen, a high school diploma is like a GED. Associate's degree is like the high school diploma. A master's degree is like a bachelor's degree, and that was like before Project 2025. So honorary degrees is like my spoon, non-relevant, right?
Right.
It's not valid. It's not valid. So even people back in, you know, the pandemic, even PhD holders were on the unemployment line. So when you're having that type of impact, and that was like what, 5-6 years ago, and we're now in this current state, this advocacy is real. Like, what does that really look like? Not just from a theoretical perspective, but a practical application that is not wanting ice showing up at your door because you act right.
Right.
And then that wealth gap, look, people struggling today. So what is the answer? It's how know your mini conference, but go ahead, Doc.
And I really wish I had like a magic wand to make it all right and to have the answer. There are a couple of suggestions for solutions. You know, there's some policy work. There's still people that are doing the work behind the scenes and making changes or attempting to make changes with policy. You know, whether it's the attorney generals of states or, you know, on a federal level, you know, getting out, like you testified the other day, it was something on a local level, but it will have an impact on how things run in the county. So that is a form of advocacy, using your voice. You know, if you have the coins to support, by all means, you know, support those organizations or those folks that are still fighting for the justice that many deserve. If you're able to, you know, volunteer time, because you know we give up a lot of our time, don't we? If you're able, I know I do. If you're able to volunteer your time, then so be it. If you know, you can practice advocacy in smaller groups. You know, we know certain communities are being affected by budget cuts in the system, so that a lot of schools are not able to provide certain services or whatever. So if you are in a position to make some donations to the schools, or you know, there's so many different ways that you can advocate or fight for, you know, or stand up for whatever it is that you're passionate about, you know. And everyone doesn't have the same passion project, but you know, if there's something that you feel strongly about, or there's a cause or an issue that, you know, you're like, hey, I want to do something about it, there are ways in which you can, you know, be an advocate for something as simple as, you know, we were talking about this earlier. Hey, some people have learned how to make their own bread. We've learned how to shop at the farmers market. We've learned how to go to the farms and, support those farmers, and also get fresh stuff that we know we need, and not spend so much money in the places that we don't need to be in, cooking more at home, from an economic standpoint. It's so many things that we can do. And granted, like I said, it's not the solution, but there are a couple of things that we can do to at least help us as a community, as a household, sustain ourselves. It's I because we're still in it. Like, we ain't even gonna get through a year of this nonsense with these goofy people. And I want to say some words, but
No.
we have it's we just getting in. Like, we just sticking our toe in the pool. We ain't even get in. We got a long way to go.
Yes.
So how are we going to, as sustain ourselves? Not just survive, and I know many of us are in survival mode, but at some point we're going to have to learn how to level up a little bit and come out of survival mode so that we can thrive. Because when you thrive, it's Sankofa, you reach back and you bring someone else along. That's really what it's about. That not leaving anyone behind. I guess that's more so what I want to say.
In this topic, obviously you weren't a part of the first interview with Professor Ingrid Tabio McLaughlin, but her topic is environmental. So here we're talking about economic development and sustainability. You went down a pathway from the food standpoint, right? Which is environmental.
Yeah, I touched on her subject. I'm sorry.
No. It's a great thing, because for those that have not watched that interview, please go back and look up that interview, again, just briefly. But the one thing I do want to tap into what you're saying, which that environmental and health and food directly impact economic development and sustainability, and something I had not thought about. So I love grapes and I love watermelon, but oftentimes I'll get seedless because I hate picking the seeds out of my grapes and out of the watermelon. But here's the connection, right? Which is why we're having this Know Your Rights tour. The answer locally to the NAACP Our 2025, which goes against the fight of Project 2025, right? So as we were talking yesterday, if people really took the seeds, and my daughter is great at this. She's listening, but I'm not talking to her. But anyway, if I literally took the seeds out of the grapes and planted them, I would have my own grapes.
You will
not worry about $2.99, $3.99, $4.99 a bundle. Even though I hate the green ones, but I love the brown, the great ones. The purple. And the purple. And then watermelon. I always get my watermelon seedless because I hate to get out those seeds. But speaking with her, it just reminded me. And so I talked about my daughter Haley, who is I have my two youngest are a rising senior at Morehouse at 17. And then my daughter, whatever, she's listening, a rising senior
that's my girl
at 19. But Haley, you know how we go to the place to get your nails done and waxing? Well, this chick created her own wax.
There you go.
And when I tell you, I mean, she done made her own lotion. She has an aloe vera plant out on a deck. And I'm like,
yes.
She was a person, she would be in the encyclopedia.
Yes.
But then in our refrigerator, she has this plant. And I said, Hales, why do you have dirt in the refrigerator? And she was like, because Mom, according to research, it has to sit in this area in a refrigerator and manifest whatever. And then from there, then it would grow. And I'm like, are you in a right? I'm thinking to myself, you need to have like a chemist background. All of these potions that could really go in the market and save people money. But that goes back to what you were saying in that sample of economic development and sustainability that rolls over into environmental, that rolls over into health. And for her, she would, as women, we get these bumps on our arms depending on what deodorant. She noticed bump. And she was like, yeah, I can't use that deodorant anymore. She said,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, and instead of playing around, I just whipped up my own what's
That's
name. I
right.
was just like,
That's right. Yep.
she's clearly living
That's
somebody else's life
yeah.
with her major, but this goes back into, and she was doing this at 17, 18.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm like, you could really put this on the market. But when we're talking about getting our youth involved and how it's having an impact on economics, and you're welcome, whatever, not talking to you. But anyway, this goes literally back to what you were talking about. And
Yep.
even what our discussion the other day with Professor Ingrid, because when, just imagine if everybody took in that fortitude of, instead of me spending $25 to get my eyebrow arched, let me
Right.
make this up at home, right?
Right.
Instead of, and I don't even know where she got this from. That was the other thing. Like, I sent her off to school in Georgia. She's coming back with new
Oh, she's in the prime territory for that, even for growing vegetables and farming and agriculture and stuff. She's in the space for that. Yeah. Yeah. She might just have her own little community in a minute. She gonna use that Spelman money, honey, and put it to work and build a small community.
And culturally, yeah, and culturally, Doc, even my neighbors, like I was telling Professor Ingrid, my neighbors around me, fence or no fence, have created a garden. They're growing their vegetables.
That's right.
They're growing what it is that they want to eat. And here I am being bougie, ordering groceries online and picking them up down the street. And I'm thinking, like,
we are indigenous people. We are indigenous people, and we have always been self-sufficient. And this is the time to go back to what we know culturally, how we are going to take care. Like I said, it's not just about taking care of yourself. It's about taking care of others. So Haley, kudos to her, because she did something for herself, but it's going to impact other people. It'll benefit other people. So she's on the right track. You know, that's my girl.
I need to get her to monetize it. She just like, she created, she has locks, where she does her own locks. Now she does her brother locks. She does her other brother locks. And now she, not a hairdresser, but they pay her to do her locks and braids on campus. But she created this olive oil and water something that she used for the locks. Somebody is paying her for it. And I'm like,
hello,
this stuff. But it goes back into what
you trademark.
She doesn't. She's just like, okay, Ma, I'll come back to it. But
she's like me.
But Doc, let's not go.
What did you tell me? You can't be giving away your services.
You can't be giving away your. As long as she give it to me, she fine. But it goes back into what you're saying, that we have to get. You know what? And I know we're wrapping up because people really need, if they want the tangible outcomes and solutions we're talking here in this brief discussion, they really need to come to our Know Your Rights mini tour. I'm not even lying about this. Like this is real stuff. Like, these conversations are important. But when as this discussion is wrapping now, it reminded me that maybe the pandemic was the introduction of how people needed to get back to the root and the heart of how to survive as a community, as one people with one voice. We throw away the segregation and the separation and the hierarchy based off of socioeconomic status and rural versus, inner city versus urban. Like, literally, when the pandemic hit, we just had to come together as a people. And now we have a different type of pandemic.
And if you think about that, yes. Think about how we cared about each other during that time. Think about how humane people were to one another, how caring we were, how we communicated, how we really, really embodied the whole concept of community. There were people we were isolated, Think about folks that were isolated in their homes, but there were people who were and I go back to New York, there were people in buildings and our buildings are real. We have apartment buildings of like 50, 60 floors. Think about people in those buildings that had to interact with other people, or folks who they would get out on their terraces and they would play music or whatever the case may be to help each other maintain their sanity. Like that's where we are. And you're right. That was the precursor to this
Yes.
right here. And
Yes.
we've always been able to sustain. We just have to learn how to be more innovative and creative in what we do now, because our children and our grandchildren are going to be affected by this. Yes. It's going to take some time to unravel this nonsense.
Right.
Ugh.
But like we're saying, and I don't even know why I didn't even do the correlation before now. That was the precursor to this.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in terms of barriers went out the door. Parents got down to, even though they didn't like their children, they had to learn to live with it. Like, I think that was the biggest aha moment. People like, when are they going back to school? Because I can't handle this, right? But the gaps in education was closing. The gaps from an economic standpoint was closing. The gap with wasting food was closing. You know, and now look at where we are again. If we're able to get back in that mindset of isolation and humanity and collaboration, then regardless of a Project 2025, the fight against or not, people will be okay, because now it's the unification and the humanity that is keeping us connected. See, Doc, this is why you and I vibe so well. And this is why you're my person. Yes, I'm being a little biased. It's okay. I can, because it's my show. I don't care about anybody that's listening and don't like it. But
that's right.
When you align with a person that gets it, and that's of Doc and Dot, we get it. Right. But this is not just about us. And as we're winding down here, because we can, and that's the beauty of the NAACP. And even before we got into this NAACP, education rolled over into criminal justice rolled over into economic sustainability and development, that rolled over into health, that rolled over into X, Y, and Z. But because we are leaders on the ground doing a good fight, as John Lewis was saying, we are inviting people to get involved, not in the sense of taking photo ops, not in the sense of shopping a newspaper on the news, but this is just the start for us, right? Somebody already tried to steal our title, but you can never steal the heart and the purpose behind why this is being done. And we do want our communities on the ground to understand that we are back in the COVID. Not isolated and limited to virtual, but we're being placed in this bubble that is where our freedom and our liberties and our rights and everything is literally being taken away. The question is, what will we do about it? How will we unite? And like you said, in this farmers thing, is it new? Like, that was the hottest discussion in the last work session. You know, here in Baltimore County, Councilman Wade is putting towards a resolution or bill to create Baltimore County's first Department of Agriculture. I support that as an individual.
100%. That's 100%. Right.
To hear the testimony of a person that's living in a rural area by our former county executive, got a phone call, was like, hey, can you bring eggs over? He said when he pulled up to the Timonium Fairgrounds, his face dropped, his mouth dropped. He said he'd never seen people in need like that. The cars were going down the street. And living in his area, he said he didn't see that. He said that the limitations and the struggles were real. He said, and that changed his mindset and his approach because, he grow his own eggs and his food and whatever. But we were struggling here. And how can we have food deserts or apartheid anywhere with farmers in our county? Okay, that's another discussion. But anyway,
I'm telling you, Doc, listen, all I need is some land. I got it. And I come from a line. I come from a line of farmers. It's in my genes, right? So I already know if my people were able to sustain themselves, and then I could be the living testament to my ancestral line. Yeah, I know that. And we have to continue to believe that we are so much greater than, right? That we can do this. We can do it. It may be challenging, but it's not impossible.
Right.
We can do it.
Right.
So
all things are possible. And I know we're wrapping up. Those are those final words. I just hope people do understand to latch on to hope and faith, right? Faith and trust.
That's right.
And like we said, it looks blurry. It's a tsunami around you. It looks dark. It looks like there's no end. But like you said in your opening introduction, serenity, be still, step back, be one with another, close out and drown out the noise. Yes. Eventually there comes a season, reason, and a lifetime of serenity. But it has to start with the person. And if you are connected to children and grandchildren and brothers and sisters and the elderly and the young, if you're serene, if you're in alignment, it's gonna roll over. Listen, in my house, when we close the door, we're shutting the world to negativity outside.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Not everybody is meant to break bread here, but
that's right.
Your spiritual prowess and your spiritual enlightenment is where we need to be right now in the midst of this chaos. So parting words, Doc, what you want to say before I wrap this up? And people need to go out and get their tickets. So no, you're right.
Yes. Besides getting your tickets, right? Being present and being present and just contributing to the conversation and being a part of the solutions. Again, this is something that I tell my children: failing to prepare is preparing to fail. We have to be prepared for various reasons. And this is a start. And I know there are many other places, other spaces where folks are attempting, whatever it is that they do, but we all have to do it. We all have to do it. Okay. So those are my parting words. I'm wishing everyone peace and joy and whatever it is that you do. If you're learning how to grow watermelon seeds, sis, then you do your thing. Listen, I'm working on potatoes next. I'm gonna get mine. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get it. I'm going to get it. I told my kids I'm gonna grow a whole pineapple tree. But it's the attempt. It's the attempt. And it may not be right the first time, but guess what? We're gonna get it right. And this will be something that your children and their children will benefit from. So
yes. And
thank you for giving me the space, Doc.
Oh, of course, always. And again, if you have not gotten your tickets, please go to Eventbrite. Yes, we are putting it out there because we have limited seats, and then there's a wait list. We have a few more seats left. And obviously get your membership for the NAACP. You can join any chapter, but none is unique to 7032B.
That's right.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't be right if I didn't put that out there. But I can say that we're on an upward trajectory. And most importantly, before you start blaming others, look in the mirror.
Ooh.
If you want the needle to move, it's going to start with your movement. So can we hold county council and the legislators and the senators, accountable? Yes, but we have to first hold ourselves accountable. Start in your house, have those conversations, go back to, the pandemic 4 years ago when you was isolated as a family, when you had to teach the basics of 1 + 1 is 8, in 2040, that kind of thing, because tomorrow isn't promised.
That's right.
The 180-day playbook is real. We've already seen it. Things are rolling back, and we don't know what we don't know for the remainder of this first year. So instead of getting behind it, let's get in front of it and intervene. Right. And it doesn't start on August 23rd, but there's a continuation on August 23rd. So don't meet us, beat us at the CCBC Randallstown Extension Center on Offer Road, which is the heart of the Randallstown community. And just know that we're there for you, on behalf of you, led by you. So this is Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, radio podcast host for DTD Urban Multisport radio podcast show, with my guest, Dr. LaShaune Stitt, on the Know Your Rights tour, sponsored by the Randallstown NAACP 7032B. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you and have a great day. And don't forget to get your memberships. Peace out, people.